What screams I live on daddy's money? The foreign students who go to school in the expensive metropolitan city, pay international fees, don't attend classes regularly, and only wear designer brands. Obviously this is not reflective of all foreign students. You forgot. Live in the most expensive apartments, drive expensive sports cars. Had an employee once who was fresh out of grad school, paid him $60k, he drove a brand new $120k Mercedes, lived in a $4k month penthouse, wore all bespoke clothing, etc etc. His salary was definitely a blip on his financial radar. It was wild. I cannot go out tomorrow, I have to work. Just tell your boss that you want to do it, don't be afraid of him. Who does he think he is? It happened to me. He works in his father's company. Well, that's ridiculous. Even fathers who employ their sons usually don't put up with that. When they don't understand financial restrictions. There have been a few people I've met who never really thought about not having enough money to do something. Anything from fixing a car to going out to eat. If you say you can't do something because you're broke and they respond with, just put it on your credit card, they are likely a candidate. I used to work with a guy years ago. We were both in our mid-20s and both working in junior white-collar jobs, making around the same pay. So while it was okay money, it wasn't amazing. This guy was buying his third home in as many years. Like, he already owned 2, lived in one, rented out the other, nice houses, and was buying a third and keeping the other 2 to build a mini property portfolio. When I told him that my wife, who also worked a white-collar job, and I couldn't afford a down payment, he responded, just ask your family for the money. That's what I do. When I responded that they didn't have the kind of money, and b, even if they did, we weren't comfortable doing that, he just couldn't understand it. He was visibly confused, because it was outside his little bubble. An old co-worker of mine, who was a super nice guy, never made any higher than $40k. He was able to buy a house while his wife stayed home with his son. Got a brand new Lexus every 2 years or so. Posts pictures of him on traveling on planes all the time in first class and or a private jet. His first year at work he'd talk to us like all of this common, but I think he learned pretty quickly to keep quiet about his privileged life. I have a friend who told me he has distant cousins who live off a trust fund that pays them 10 grand a month each and they're having trouble getting by. If you're really dumb with money, you could make that money disappear like that. For a period of time in the early 2000s I lived in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Rents in some parts of Williamsburg were and still are ridiculously expensive. I couldn't afford to live in the vicinity of the cool area, otherwise known as Bedford Avenue. Instead I roomed with 5 other people in a converted 3-bedroom apartment about a 15-20 minute walk away from Bedford. Every so often I'd find myself at a cafe on Bedford Avenue and see all the faux starving artists sitting there looking like they'd just rolled out of bed for hours on end. It was clear they didn't have anywhere they needed to be. Rents for a 1BR on near Bedford were often north of $2,000 a month. And that was in 2001-2002. No way in heck you're 18-22 years old and paying your own bills working part-time if you live there. I, 30F, just started to date a guy. Not too long after I lost a job, I took a roommate in to help me pay the rent and he got mad. Said that he will be less comfortable because of the privacy and couldn't understand that I put money before the relationship. I said that I will not spit on $500 month and that I won't be able to pay. His solution: ask money from my parents and wait a couple of months till he moves in and saves me. After a fight, I mostly discover that he still lived in his parents' home at 30. His whole shtick about travel is my philosophy suddenly seemed less cool. I broke up that week. Not understanding the schedule restrictions due to having a part-time job, or not being able to understand why you can't stay out late because you have to get up for work at 5 AM for a job that doesn't pay enough to comp for the gas it would take to drive all over town all night. So many people seem genuinely confused about people who don't work MF 9-5 jobs, like they benefit from all the work that the non-9-5ers do. Retail, hospitality, healthcare, transit, food service, but somehow never connected the dots that the people providing those services are still people who are working for a living. Next on House Hunters, I'm a freelance basket weaver. My wife is a kindergarten teacher. We're looking for a rustic house outside of Austin on a $5 million budget. Every San Francisco episode is this. Your first car at 16 is a Mercedes or any luxury cars. You are 27, jobless, still live at your parents' and show off your expensive purses, shoes, clothes and lifestyle on Instagram. Walks into the fanciest restaurant in Manhattan, orders the most expensive things there are on the menu, only takes a bite or two. Monsters. Well, at the fanciest restaurants in Manhattan you only get a bite or two. You know those YouTubers who casually drive supercars around to review them and really it's like a homebrew reality show? Yeah, them. I like to hear about all the quirks and features though. They just got a prime spot on the Slytherin Quidditch team and everyone else on the team just happens to have the latest Nimbus brooms. Wait till his father hears about this. Income disparity really besmacked me when I got out of school. When all of my friends graduated and moved on, most of us hung around the city we went to school near. I had an engineering degree and was making more than most of my friends, but still living in a major US city on an entry-level salary. Times were lean, but whatever. Each weekend though, I was somehow the only person who could barely afford gas or had to stay in because I didn't have bar money. I'd get little nuggets of wisdom from my friends sometimes that I needed to be smarter with my money, but these guys were living in the same crappy apartments as me, going to the same bars whilst somehow making less. It confused the frick out of me. They got vacations, nice dinners in town and bought new cars, meanwhile I was out earning them by like $10,000 per year and eating fricking Hot Pockets for dinner 5 nights a week and driving a beat up old Hyundai with a savings account balance of 0. A few years later I was talking to someone in that group and he said something to the effect of, yeah, everyone's parents take care of them after they get out of school. It's what they're supposed to do. Then it clicked. I'm 35 now and it's so painfully obvious when I see the same brand of 22-year-old kids around town ordering the most expensive thing on the menu. That crap's daddy money and he's acting like he earned it. That crap's daddy money and he's acting like he earned it. That is what I can't stand. Not that their parents contribute and their kids enjoy life, but the fact that these rich kids act like they earned it or ignore the fact that they're getting help. I live in a relatively high income community, and I'll see teenagers with Rolexes and doorless Jeeps joyriding on the main road. It's no fun to be near them. My roommates are like this. I'm struggling working 40+ hours trying to make rent and have food, but all they do is sit at home and dong around all day. I wish I could tell you what they do, and for whatever reason they won't go get their own food ever, so I have to bring crap home for them, otherwise they complain. They never clean up after themselves and leave their crap everywhere, which makes me think their mom must have done that kind of thing for them. And if I'm gone for even one night they freak out and start meowing when I get home. Don't even get me started on the litter boxes. Had me in the first half. Not understanding the value of the dollar. Example, when my best friend and I were World of Warcraft addicts in middle school through college, there would be times where I would run out of money for my sub. It was dang expensive for a kid like myself buying my own way using prepaid time cards. My best friend would say, oh, just do what I do and charge it to your dad's credit card. That way you can just pay by year and not worry about it. He wasn't being a prick. That's just the only way he knew. He had no idea what it was like to have to work hard for something so simple. Wow, wasn't cheap, man. $15 a month. Being in college without a job while also getting the latest iPhone every year and never even thinking about scholarships or student loans. Most of that depends on the country you're in, not the iPhone though. Being a Chinese national and going to a UK university. I mean, not all of them, but like most, the cars, the clothes. These kids are freaking kept. Not working, having no desire to work as an adult, not having the basic understanding of working equals money equals food life, etc. Crap, I've got no desire to work, but I still show up on time because I have to. I knew a guy, oh boy, we went to town to go shopping for some things, and he parked his car in a no parking spot. I told him that he couldn't park there and he said, sure I can, it just costs me €370. I've never been that baffled by a response before in my life. I dated a girl who would get angry with me if I didn't spend enough time with her during the week because of my regular 40-hour work week. She lives in her grandparents' house with half of the rest of her family and hasn't had a job since about 2013. Couldn't fathom why I put my responsibilities and bills before the relationship. I still can't, not even 5 years later, wrap my head around that reasoning. When someone boasts fiscal responsibility and bootstraps as the reason for their success, it's really easy to take career risks when you have a trust fund to fall back on. Work becomes a money-making game at that point. Basically everybody who thinks there is nothing wrong with the economy and that simply getting any job still works. Those people usually do work but always have some sort of indirect huge benefit. I had a friend who became an engineer after busting his butt in tech school for years, for example, but he never tells people how during that time his parents let him live in their vacant apartment they owned, or how he never had to get a car or worry about taking public transit because they just gave him cars they paid off. They weren't rich, but my friend likes to say anyone can do what I did, but it isn't even remotely true. Most people would have failed utterly without those benefits, if they even managed to get started in the first place. These guys always forget their bonus money. Just wait till these people succeed in a startup. They will go around telling everyone how if they did a startup they could succeed just like them, ignoring the fact that if they failed horribly, they could always just go back to family for help starting back up. Most people don't have that luxury. Being in college and frequently bragging about and posting on their social media all the partying that they do and trips that they take, while seemingly never going to class. Early 20s masseurs living in a 300k, 900 square foot flat downtown, always has the latest clothes, drives a Beamer, has been a masseuse for all of 3 years, never went to college. That sounds more like someone is an escort than living on daddy's dime, maybe a sugar daddy's dime. I knew a girl who once asked me, "You work all the time, how can you not afford to go out?" Had to explain what I pay for rent, food and bills on top of uni fees and assignment fees. She couldn't compute. Had a professional career mentor at my college for alumni. Made a meeting with the guy to ask about starting a business as an artisan, how to get studio space and pay for everything. Being an entrepreneur is not something taught at art school, but it's expected that you become one and know how to do it. I have no business savvy, I didn't know where to start. The man looked at me 10 minutes in and said, "You could just ask your parents to loan you 10 grand. I was at a complete loss for words. Number 1. Thanks tips. If that was an option, do you think I would be here with you? Number 2. Not everyone has a spare few tens of thousands hanging around for just funsies. Goodness, what planet are you even from?" This man was in his 60s and completely clueless that asking for such a sum wasn't possible for some people. Also, adults not knowing how student loans work. We had foreign exchange students living with us. Complained that her parents were mad that she spent $500 a month on Uber. She was 14. When my wife took her to the airport, she said, "I'm in business class." My wife said, "That's nice." She replied, "Premier and first were full." Instagram models with no legit talent but realistically wealthy, either living on daddy's money or the other kind of daddy's money. I had an ex-boyfriend try to get me pregnant. Found out he was messing with my birth control. We were both in undergrad. He already had 1 kid. I wanted and still want none of my own. When I called him out, I told him that even if I went through with a potential accidental pregnancy, had I not found out about the BC sabotage, we weren't in a place to afford a baby. It'll be fine. Your parents will pay for everything, and of course he believed that because his parents paid for all his expenses, including his child support, so he could buy toys. People who have no financial knowledge at all, especially the ones, when they get money they spend it on non-important wants such as expensive clothing items. Just basically someone who's very irresponsible when it comes to money. My friend wasn't extremely wealthy, but it's clear that his family was well off when he was in high school. We were talking about high school a few years ago. He asks me, "Remember those times when you and your friends would go to school early so you can park your cars next to each other?" I replied back, "Bro, my friends and I were poor. Our asses walked every day hoping we didn't get jumped by gang members on our way home. I think he thought I was joking, but I was dead serious. I have a few friends who have crummy jobs, and they have a roommate or two to afford rent, yet somehow they go on trips to Europe and Spain and Hawaii and stuff every few months. The only way I can figure they're doing this is daddy is sending them money for the trips, or is paying their normal bills so their work money goes toward fun. Being a 23-year-old white person, covered in elaborate tattoos you could display in the Louvre, dressed like an idealized fantasy of a penniless hippie, with an Instagram feed that's nothing but photos of themselves in yoga poses on beaches in Southeast Asia. To be fair, they could just be hot and frick rich dudes. A friend of mine, actually an awesome person, comes from a wealthy background, owns horses, went to a private school etc etc. My wife was about to be made redundant, which came as a shock. We have not long been married by this point and have a mortgage to pay. I am a teacher, so my salary is okay but not enough to pay for all this in its own. My friend said to my wife, just buy some land and invest and you won't have to work, as if it was a perfectly ordinary thing to do. Friend of mine, dad bought him $1 million mansion, sold it to him for $300k. Not like real selling either. Flat from dad to son, no interest or anything. He doesn't see this as anything other than good timing. I can't hate him though. Dude is genuinely kind and smart as heck. He could have landed a job to buy the house anyway. Still, money is a blind spot to him. He has no idea how rich his family is. A rigid socialist ideology and anxiety around poor people. This has to be the worst telling trait I've seen over the years. Vocal advocates for social justice who cannot mingle with other classes except to provide assistance. Not a complete response, but my dad pulled himself up from being pretty lower class financially as a kid to where we're pretty well off. And my lifelong goal has always been to never fully rely on my parents so that I don't make the same mistakes as some of these comments. Having zero concept of the value of money, they don't get why their less wealthy friends can't go out to restaurants with them, nor do they understand that a ton of people can't just take off on a vacation. When a Louis Vuitton bag with plenty of money and a new iPhone gets stolen from gym but she wouldn't report it to the cops, instead stops going to that gym. How do I know? That's my girlfriend. The trust fund bohemian, living in a gentrified area like Brooklyn, working part-time at a bagel shop or unpaid internship, the newest Apple tech, music or craft beer festivals every other weekend. In England, every girl that lives on daddy's money drives a Fiat 500, watches Love Island, Big Brother X on the beach religiously etc, works maybe 8 hours a week, has the latest iPhone, has long but fake nails, wears white Nike Air Max, has little to no common sense and has a Winnie Mooney voice and generally expects everyone to do everything for them. Basically a spoilt crap really. That would be a good ass starter packs. Girl got angry at her parents and left to live alone. She got an apartment and complained how her parents were the worst. Her parents were paying the expenses for her apartment and an allowance. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.